Oh, tips. Now you make me feel like I'm an expert. I think Tony's actually already mentioned quite a few of the things, and certainly that I've done. Um, so I had, I guess I did really three things. One is read, and two is stay connected, and three is speak to people that matter to me. I had quite a lot of books already, collecting a lot of dust. So I read them. I didn't go out buying lots of self-help books, just what was already at home. And do you want me to name a few?
Absolutely, I'm taking notes.
Okay. So there was one book, a little different from the rest I'm going to tell you, but this is because my daughter actually gifted this to me last year, and it's Learn Python the Hard Way by Zed Shaw. And then there was a few leadership books. So there's The Leadership Gap, Lolly Daskal, I think. I finally got round to reading Lead In, Sheryl Sandberg. Start with Why, Simon Sinek. And Clarity, that was a good one, Clarity by Jamie Smart. So these were a few of the books that I'd read. And to stay sharp, because as Tony said, you do need to keep learning and you need to remain current. And I wanted to do that, but without getting much attention. So how do you stay connected but sort of stay under the radar? Well, actually, the internet's an amazing place. So YouTube, I discovered YouTube, and it's brilliant. There's so much you can learn from there. And then LinkedIn, there are some really good people you can follow and really tailor it to your interest and areas that you want to continue developing or start developing in. And all companies and institutions these days, we all have smartphones, and all of these companies and institutions have apps that you can have news feeds and subscribe to them free of charge. So a few of the ones that I did was MIT News, TED Talks, INSEAD Knowledge, McKinsey Insights, Reuters, Economist Express, and so forth. It's there. You just go to App Store and it will shoot out a whole lot.
Tony, you're obviously a real expert on how to use the network. What do you think about that during your career break?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And Ruja, you've covered off some really great points about online networking, and particularly for those who, like in your case, you want to keep under the radar. But I think if you're active across social media platforms, such as LinkedIn or in Procurious, and it doesn't necessarily have to be work related. But if you're taking time out and enjoying your time off and whatever you're doing, you can post some updates of that, keeping it professional, obviously. It's a professional working site. But I can use one example of quite a senior HR executive for one of the major banks here in Australia. She has left the bank, but she's taken a sabbatical to travel the world, and she's blogging about her travels. And I think that's going to open up some great conversation when she returns. It's creating conversation online. But I think also attending regular networking events, even if it's just one a quarter, and just staying connected, with colleagues and peers and past and present leaders, from time and again, and just staying current in your industry. And again, all the information is at your fingertips now. You don't necessarily have to go out and speak to people. You can Google it. So.
Absolutely. And you've spoken already a little bit about how important it was for you to go out and talk to people and really stay sharp on what's happening in the profession. But I wonder, could you talk a little bit about, as a budding entrepreneur, taking time out, do you have some specific tips about how to spend the time?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I want to thank Ruji and Tony for their tips as well. I'm always interested in hearing those suggestions for how one can improve their approach to something. And I really view them as gifts. It's gifts that I try to receive graciously, and also, as one colleague advised me, be generous in the gifts that you provide others, because it will come back to you. And I found that to be very true. But specific to some of the tips that I've used relative to the business, I would take the time and be disciplined about documenting your business plan. I was really reluctant to do this, and I was strongly encouraged to do this, and I found that has been a very important guideline for me, and I've referred to it often, updated it often, and it's helped me stay very focused on my mission, what my values are, and how I plan to achieve my strategy. So that's very important, especially as you think about how you're going to finance the business, how you're going to achieve the business goals. And also, I think it helps you get ready for whether or not entrepreneurship is a fit for you personally. Very practically, I think you need to prepare for deciding where and how you will accomplish your work. Things like what's going to be your workspace? How will you print things, copy things, mail, conference calls, calendaring, expense reporting, technology support. These were all things that I took for granted as an employee of a large employer, and found that every time I encountered them, I had to figure that out. And so be thinking about that in advance and deciding how you'll handle those things. I also created a board of advisors. These are people that could help me with advice on legal and accounting topics, but can also help you with things like previewing a logo or a website and looking at marketing collateral. It helps to have other points of view, and finding those people that will be honest and forthcoming and provide you that valuable feedback is really valuable. And then finally, I think Ruji mentioned it as well, and Tony, I know that this is important in your profession. I grew my LinkedIn network by requesting connections with my contacts. I really hadn't been all that active as an employee, but I found this to be extremely important to my business. I've created a Twitter account. I've hired a social media expert. I follow companies and use customer relationship management tools to manage my actions and follow-ups. And these are all new skills and methods of transacting commerce today. And then finally, I ask any contact to help me understand their challenges. It keeps me relevant. It helps me thinking about what my value proposition is going to be, and it keeps me engaged with people that are working in our profession today. And as I mentioned, I think every new interaction allows for some gift exchange. One in particular I'd like to recommend, in addition to Ruji's list of books, is Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. I found that to be so valuable, taking the time to meet someone for a coffee or for lunch, or even, an after-work dinner. It's very valuable. People are in a more relaxed state of mind. There's no real agenda other than just developing the relationship. And I think that important business relationships really grow from that foundational relationship.
So many great tips there. I'm definitely going to have to take a career break now. I've got such a long list of reading to get through. Ruji and Tony, thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, this discussion, we're going to open up to questions shortly, but this discussion will also continue on Procurious for some time. And if you're interested to read even more about how some of procurement superstars got their career breakthrough, you should definitely check out the blog. We're highlighting just a few of the career break related articles that are there. And before we hand over to questions, I want to advise all the listeners that if you're interested, I'm sure our webinar contributors would welcome you connecting with them on LinkedIn or Procurious if you think of more questions after this. And of course, we welcome all of you to join us in our next career-focused activity on Procurious, and that is Career Bootcamp, Upgrade, Be Tomorrow's CPO Today. And Anne, we're really looking forward to seeing you in Chicago at the Big Ideas Summit on September 28. And if you're not in Chicago, you can of course join us as a digital delegate. More than 3,500 joined us for the London event this year, so we're looking forward to growing that even more. Of course, now I'm going to hand over for questions for our webinar contributors. Looks like there's a lot of people considering a career break. We've had some great questions come in. I'm going to start with one from Helen coming in from the webinar platform. Helen's asked, I'm an interim and have been out of the office for 9 months now learning a new language. How will such a lengthy amount of time be viewed by prospective employers? Tony, do you want to kickstart that one, and then Anne, perhaps as a manager yourself?
Of course, and thanks, Lisa, and Helen, thanks for your question. Well, I think it's great that you've been learning a new language because you've picked up a new skill, and hopefully that will help with, perhaps in your new role somewhere. But I don't think 9 months is a deal breaker. I don't even think up to 12 months is a deal breaker. I just do believe that, with that time out, there's usually a purpose in what you're doing, and it's really around, I believe, the strategies that you'll employ to get back into the workforce. So, well done for doing something a bit different, and perhaps one step closer to another goal.
And Anne?
Yes, I definitely agree with Tony, and I would also add that I think it's important on how you weave your story when you're talking with a hiring manager, making sure that it's clear why you did this and how it might fit in with your career goals or your personal goals, and helping them understand the importance of taking that time out to learn that skill and build your capability that might ultimately benefit an employer.
Great. I've got a question here coming from Glasgow. Ewan Granger says that he loves the concept of a career break, although he's quick to point out he's not considering one at the moment, and says, what's the best way to approach this with your current employer? Do you think you can sell this to make it to their advantage too, and not leave them just thinking you want an extra long holiday?
Well, I'll take that one, Lisa. I think that it's important to put yourself in the position of the employer and understand that they do have a business to run, and typically they're evaluating such requests on the basis of the business as well as the needs of their talent. But I guess I would approach it with a business case of some sort, maybe identifying the benefits for the company, for your personal development, as well as perhaps the time that would allow you to develop skills and perhaps bring that benefit back to the company. But I think part of that business case would be to estimate the cost or time away. Perhaps there's a need to fill in while you're absent, but also use the opportunity to suggest that this might be a development opportunity for someone else on the team while you're away, and again, give you that assurance that you can leave your function in good hands.
Great. Tony, do you have anything to add to that one?
I think, Anne, you just made a great point around, I guess, possibly looking at whether you've got some direct reports that you could train up, or if you're an individual contributor, can you bring in someone else in the organisation or internally to, take on the responsibilities that you're delivering, just so there's no major gap and no major impact to the business while you're away.
Right. There's quite a practical question here from Alistair Jack in Wales. If you're considering a change in careers, where do you begin? A break can help find perspective, but what practical steps are there? How do you match skills developed within procurement to other professions? Tony, you must see this a lot.
I do, and I can actually personally relate to this as well. I've been recruiting for over 18 years, but I'm an ex-banker of 8 years before then, so I made a complete career change. So, Alistair, I think I can relate to where you're coming from. I think if you perhaps just start by looking at defining your skills and really just putting some pen to your thoughts on paper on, well, one, what do you really enjoy doing, and what do you love doing, and what are you great at, and that can also come from feedback, informal or formal, you've received from your peers, your leaders, and then start, take a look at that list, and start matching those skills to roles that call for that. So I guess when I look at what a great procurement professional looks like, well, today they're commercially focused and they're great negotiators and, they're great at managing relationships. So those skills are quite transferable and can be found in many other roles. So, and then the next step from there is just to start having conversations with people that might be in the roles that you might be wanting to pursue. Asking them the questions on how they made the break into that particular profession. It'll take some time, but I know that with a lot of effort and a lot of persistence that you'll ultimately get there. So good luck.
And have you seen people making successful transitions from procurement to other functions within the business?
I have.
Oh, sorry, Anne. My apologies. You go. Yes. You go.
I'm sorry. Yes, I have. I think that Tony made a great point that some of the skills that we have as procurement professionals do transfer very well in many different areas. And in fact, I think the opposite is true, that people with skills outside of procurement come into that field. Things like, in addition to what Tony mentioned, I would also add project management, and really internal selling skills has become more and more important. So influencing skills and being able to understand your leaders' challenges, the business challenges. I think that people have come to procurement with other background, whether it be IT or operations or transportation, and have found great success. So I do believe that it's a profession where many different skills are transferable both in and out.
Definitely. A question here from Jeff. At different stages of your career, say in your 30s, should you take any different thinking towards your career break planning than, say, in your 40s or 50s? Anyone want to tackle that one?
Well, I'll take a stab at it.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
go ahead.
Go right ahead, Tony. Go right ahead.
No, well, thank you. Well, I think it comes down to where you're at in your I guess you got to look at your personal circumstances. Sure, some people might think that when you're in your 30s, your career is, progressing into a level. You might be, being promoted, or your personal circumstances might be different to someone who perhaps is more mature in their life. So I don't know if there's any particular one time or particular right time to take a career break. I think you just want to consider, what where you might be when your break ends and what you'll be wanting to fulfil. So importantly and ultimately, I just think it's really around how you're staying connected and networked with people that can help guide your career forward, or help progress your career forward at the same time.
And what about you? Do you think there's a difference in terms of your considerations of taking a career break?
Well, I concur with Tony, but I think that for me, it was really important that I had enough experience and I'll say progression in my career that I build the credibility in order to take it to the marketplace independently. And so, having worked in different industries, working with different brands, being able to understand business from a variety of different perspectives was really valuable for me. And had I attempted to do this earlier in my career, I don't think I could have been successful. But for other purposes, it may very well be, the right time in your life. So I agree that consideration of your objectives for the career break and, what you're going to gain from that time away is really the important consideration.
Great answer. I think this is a really important question that's come in from the US. listener there. If you have an unplanned out-of-work absence, say due to a layoff, over 12 months of time, how do you discuss this with recruiters or hiring managers? Tony, you must be seeing an awful lot of this with the kind of M&A activity and turnover we see in businesses these days. How should somebody approach a longer layoff period?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think just being open and transparent around the circumstances of what happened with your role and really what you've done, I guess during that time out, and it does present a great opportunity to find some newfound skills, and whether that might be enrolling yourself in some vocational courses or take on some extra studies, but importantly, I think there's going to be a purpose to talk about, and really it's a story that you're going to share ultimately to the recruiter or to the hiring manager, on how you're going to get back into the workforce. Keeping yourself occupied, having conversations with people in your network, and really sometimes when you're away from your network or you're stuck in the middle of your career and you're so busy and you're thinking, well, I don't have time to talk to a lot of people, when you've got that break and when you map it out, there's plenty of people around you, and you'll be surprised that people will want to have a chat and catch up and grab a coffee and point you in some direction as well. So I honestly don't think that it's a major concern. I just think it's how you approach it getting back into the marketplace. So it's really a self-confidence thing, backing yourself and knowing that you're going to achieve the next role, wherever it might be.
Thanks, Tony. And Anne, that reminds me of your point a little earlier about the book. Was it Never Eat Alone?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like talking about the power of building relationships and networking in a situation like that. Did you have any more to add to that point?
Well, I think it's interesting because I've had several people approach me. They're in this situation. They've been out of work for a while. They have been seeking work, but I echo Tony's suggestions on how they use that time, but I also would caution that when you're seeking people to help give you guidance, also be prepared to tell them what you can do for them, whether that's researching a topic or introducing them to someone else. I think that what I've found is some people approach you with this expectation that you take over their job search for them, and certainly that is not as a positive approach. So just take care to approach this as you would any other engagement when seeking a position, and what are you doing to solve this for yourself, and not that you're just dependent on others to solve your problems.
Great. Now we've got quite a few questions here, but we might just ask just one or two more. I think this is an important one that's come in from London, from Lauren. She asks and makes a point that traditionally people once stayed in the same business for many years, and that showed that you were loyal and committed. If you've taken on a number of different roles and had various breaks throughout your career, do you think this reflects poorly on the individual? Tony, are you of that frame of mind?
Look, most people there's a trend where people are working 2 to 3 years in their current roles before considering their next move. I think if there's multiple breaks in between, each role, then I'm certainly keen to understand why someone's taken the break. But again, if it's a break with purpose and they're picking up new skills and giving back to a community or whatever they're doing, then that's entirely up to them. I don't necessarily think that you need to be around in an organisation for years to demonstrate loyalty. I think that whenever you're making your career decisions or whatever role you move into next, I think it's really important that you're demonstrating a capability to step up, or at least if it's not stepping up, then just to broaden your skills. So I don't think it does reflect poorly ultimately. It's just going to come down to what you've been doing in between those breaks. But most people are they might be short breaks of 2 or 3 months. If they're extensive breaks, then I think it's again down to what the purpose of that break was.
Mm-hmm. A question coming in from Melbourne here, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who could empathise. I won't say the name because she says, my boss is kind of old school, and I think if I ask for a career break, he will see this as a sign that I'm not very committed to the business, or maybe that I'm not ambitious enough. How would you suggest I go about having a conversation about taking maybe up to a year off to travel, but ultimately leaving my options open to return to my current business? And have you encountered this? What would you suggest?
Well, I have encountered this as a manager, but I think first I would say trust that your manager may have more capacity for listening and helping you solve this than you might give him credit for.
Mm-hmm.
But also consider that they're running a business, and if you leave, there may be a gap in their ability to achieve objectives, and that would be of concern. So I think putting yourself in his or her position to understand how they might feel and what might be impacted, and is the timing right, and then also proposing how you might solve this problem for him. Is there a contingency that you can propose that would be possible? And I think what you'll find is that if the individual can see a way within their employer to help you do this, it would be to their advantage. I think managers are very, very open to working with talent and making sure that people stay motivated and morale is high. And I think the first courageous step is really having a trusting enough relationship where you can have that conversation while at the same time understanding that this isn't going to necessarily be an easy thing for your manager, but you'll help him see a way around it. But good luck. I know that's very, very, very difficult, and I encourage you to kind of put yourself in his position as well as your colleagues, and understand how they might view this while you're away on a break.
Tony, I'm going to throw you a different question here because I think it's a good one that's come in, and that is, once upon a time, people were often asked in interviews, where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? Do you think that's still an important question in an interview, and do you think employers would mark down people who might be not so clear about that, in terms of thinking about taking a career break and reassessing where they are?
Well, look, it's a question I often ask, and I normally ask the candidates questions of where they're going to, what are their goals over the next 3 to 5 years. And for some it's quite easy. People have got their strategic direction plan. They know their career steps, whilst others they're a bit unsure, and that's just something that they probably would need to work toward. But most people, most professionals have a plan of where they want to be, and really, the question is, how do you get there? And understanding how to get there, and uncovering, I guess, those requirements will help people achieve those goals. I'd like to suggest that most people, who are dedicated to their careers and committed, typically are quite ambitious and have those plans in place. But if someone's really unsure, well, perhaps the suggestion might be that continue what they're doing and be great at what they're doing, and that's okay as well. Like, they don't necessarily always want to be, take on extra responsibilities.
Fair enough.
So,
well, thanks.
So sorry,
cutting you
off.
off.
No, it's okay.
No, finish. Please finish your point.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. So, would employees mark down someone who doesn't have that clear longer-term career plan? No. If someone's just comfortable, in the space that they're operating in, well, that can be great for an organisation if that keeps them motivated, and great for them.
Great. Well, I want to thank Ruji, Anne and Tony for joining me today. We've got them coming to us from all time zones around the world, and our questions have been the same. Thank you very much. If you'd like to listen to this webinar again, please remember that it will be hosted on Procurious in the learning area, so please feel free to refer any peers who you think might benefit from listening to this. And remember too that you're welcome to ask any follow-up questions either via Twitter using the social handles @Procurious_, #outofoffice, or ask us directly on Procurious via the discussions board. And Anne, Tony and Ruji, I'm sure would only be too happy to provide their answers, and it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the Procurious community has to say. If you are thinking about a career break, whether it's a holiday or something more substantial, the very best of luck to you. Here in London today, it's 13 degrees and rather grey, so I think there's probably many who are considering it. Thank you for joining us today, and look forward to having you participate in our next Procurious webinar. Thank you.